Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I want to thank everybody for joining us on our Wednesday night Bible study. This is the fourth part in our Passover Bible study. This is entitled, How Did Man Change the Passover to Easter, a Stolen Premise? Again, this is part 4. No part of this publication may be reproduced or retransmitted without the express written consent of Beyth-el Temple Inc. of Chicago, which is under the leadership of our Chief Apostle, Dr. Yehokanah Aman. The information that you are about to be presented is not independent of Beyth-el Temple Inc. of Chicago or Dr. Aman, who through revelational research, which includes biblical hermeneutics, has discovered the ancient biblical principles that were once kept by the prophets of old and later by Christ in the New Testament. These same principles were taught to the disciples by the Messiah, who then commanded them to go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I've commanded. Our Bible study is broken up into 2 different parts. Part 1 will be our lecture. Part 2 will be our question and answer session. When we get to our question and answer, go ahead and click star 6 on your phone, star 6 on your keypad, and we will take your questions in order. So we have 3 main objectives here on tonight. Our first objective, the purpose of this week's study is to show that Easter is a man-made festival based upon pagan customs that have no biblical basis for observance by believers of the Bible. Okay. Our second objective is to identify the pagan customs connected with the Easter celebration, and finally to identify the origin and history of the Easter festival. Okay, is it still on, Mr. Nate? So I'm going to go ahead and unmute Elder Erie. Keep me informed, Minister Nate, or whoever. Let me know if I'm still low. What do the Passover and the communion commemorate? So, Elder, before we talk about Easter or talk about Passover, we must clearly identify that the Bible talks about Passover. So we want to see what the Bible says versus what man says. So what does the Bible say about Passover or communion, and what does that commemorate?
Beautiful. As you were saying, although the Passover and the communion are observed on the same night, they do not commemorate the same event, and that we want to make that very clear. The Passover commemorates one thing, and the communion commemorates something else. You might ask yourself if you know exactly what each of these commemorates. But these passages that we're providing will show you exactly what is commemorated by each. For example, the communion. It was stated in 1 Corinthians, the 11th chapter, in the 26th verse, "For as often as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, ye do show the Yahweh's death till he comes." So the communion is about showing his death until he comes.
Okay.
And when we move along and go to the Passover itself, we'll find that the Passover, which is also called the Feast of Unleavened Bread, in Deuteronomy, the 16th chapter, in the 3rd verse, it says, "Thou shalt eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread therewith, even the bread of affliction. For thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt in haste." Now it gives you the reason, "that thou mayest remember the day when thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt all the days of thy life." So the Passover is a commemoration of our deliverance from the land of Egypt, while the communion is to show his death till he comes or until he returns.
Okay. So we have we've identified. I'm going to try to talk a little louder, so you all can continue to let me know. We identified the two things, the communion and the Passover, and what they commemorate. And it's important as we move forward that we understand these two events and what they commemorate. Does Easter commemorate the same thing as the Passover or the communion? You know, we're going to get people who say that, well, they mean the same thing. So we have to see now, does Easter and Passover or communion, do all of these, Elder, mean the same thing?
And that is definitely, they do not. So when we check it out, we understand that many Christians believe that Easter celebrates the resurrection of Christ after having spent 3 days in the grave. Now, they will argue the fact that the word Easter comes from Easter. It's a Norse word for the spring. And others will even contend that it's more likely that it comes from Easter, the name of an Anglo-Saxon goddess. And we want to point out that being the name of an Anglo-Saxon goddess, it should indicate right off the bat that there's some paganism associated with Easter.
Right.
But in either case, it does not commemorate the same thing as the Passover or the communion, even though it's thought of as having come from those feasts. Because remember, we explained to you early that the early Christian church kept the Passover, that is, until it was the ordinances of the Passover was changed, and even the name was eventually changed to Easter.
Okay.
So the point that we're making here is that the Passover is celebrated on the 14th day of the month, Abib or Nisan, and eventually this was moved to Sunday, okay, by Catholicism, which had become the Christian Sabbath. Now, when we look at these verses, and you can read through them for us, if you will, Minister Al.
Okay. Coming from Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, verse 5, it says, "In the 14th day of the first month at even is the Yahweh's Passover. Let the children of Israel also keep the Passover at his appointed season." We also see from Numbers, the 9th chapter, verse 2 and 5, it says, "And they kept the Passover on the 14th day of the first month, at even in the wilderness of Sinai. According to all that the Yahweh commanded Moses, so did the children of Israel." And we have 2 Chronicles, the 35th chapter, verse 1. "Moreover, Josiah kept a Passover unto the Yahweh in Jerusalem, and they killed the Passover on the 14th day of the first month."
So that's consistent. We see throughout the Bible that the Passover was celebrated on a particular day during a particular season. But as we move on, we will find out that something different happened, and someone instituted something actually that was not the ordinances of the Passover.
Okay. And we see, Elder, all the way from when it was given, it was always on the 14th day. We see many years later, even with Josiah, that it was the 14th day. And I want people to remember that and hold on to that 14th day of the first month, because we're going to see some changes later on, many years later, in reference to the 14th day of the first month. Easter, the commandments of men. As you just finished talking about, the early Roman church, when you said Catholicism, learned about the one true God and Christ from the Jews. Therefore, they worship God according to the way of the Jews. Elder, before we read the Bible verse, let's just kind of slow down for a minute, and I'm going to read that again so we can kind of talk about that so people understand how the early church, when we say the early church, we're talking about the formation of Christianity or Catholicism. The early Roman church learned about the one true God and Christ from the Jews. Therefore, they worship God according to the way of the Jews. So prior to the Romans, learning about the one true God. They were practicing paganism, Elder. And so they didn't know anything about it. They had many gods. So what we're saying here is that they learned of Christ. They learned of all of his ways and all of his feast days and how to please him and how to worship him by way of the Jews. And I think this is something that people lose sight of. But it's important that they know where their teachings came from, Elder. You want to add something to that, or why is that important as we move forward?
Yes, it's strange, though, that although the Catholicism learned from the Jews, that people turned around and let Catholicism direct their living. For example, now they teach us the Trinity, and the average person accepts the Trinity without question. Okay, so we can see that there's a number of things that were based in paganism, and a number of things that are just based on a misrepresentation or a misunderstanding of what the Bible is actually saying. So we will see that these changes actually begin to take shape as Catholicism begin to take control.
Okay. In Romans, the 11th chapter, verse 13, it says, "For I speak," and this is Paul, "for I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify mine office." So we see that Paul, who kept all of God's ways, he was an apostle to the Gentiles. He was an ambassador to the Gentiles. So he taught them of his ways. So they didn't just get this information, by divine revelation. They were taught by the Jews. Romans 11:13 shows that. So when we talk about the Nicene Creed, Elder, and we're going to get back to this, the Council of Nicaea established the precedent for, and I meant to take this out, for the Easter in 325 AD. And this is what they said. They said Easter must be celebrated by all throughout the world on the same Sunday, and that this Sunday must follow the 14th day of the Paschal moon. So we see, Elder, through history, that this was a decree or a command that was given around 325 AD by those that were now in charge, those that no longer wanted to be a part of the Jewish way of life, those that taught them. And so in order to distinguish themselves or separate themselves, they created this creed.
That's all right.
Isn't Easter a celebration that should be celebrated by all believers, Elder?
Well, I mean, the answer to that is clear and emphatic no. Believe it or not, the word Easter, it only appears in the Bible one time in the King James Version of the Bible. So the word appears in that Bible, and it was actually a reference to the Passover. And as we showed you on last week, when you actually look it up in the concordance, you'll find that it was a quote that was supposed to be related to the Passover. But because the early church began to take the Passover and to change it and to call it by a different name, when the translator translated it as Easter, it's not a mistake. It's simply that the early church kept the early Christians kept the Passover, and later they changed it to Easter. Okay, so that doesn't make that a mistake. That's simply showing that at one point in history, Passover and Easter was referring to the same thing. But then man began to change it, and that's where the problem began to take place. So when we read the Bible, we find out that the gradual change from the Passover to Easter, it led to a belief that Easter was originally instituted by El, and of course it was not.
Okay.
Now, when we look at a number of different versions, for example, we have the King James Version. It says, "And when he had apprehended him, he put him in the prison and delivered him to 4 quadrillions of soldiers to guard him, intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people. Now, this is what we find in the King James Version. However, we look at the NIV, we will find that, and we won't have to read the whole thing over again, but we'll find that it's actually referring to the Passover. So because of the fact that the word Easter was now instituted by another group, Easter and Passover were used synonymously. So when the translator translated this in this verse as Easter, he wasn't making a mistake. He was actually giving a fact. And so we can see throughout the Bible, if we look at the various translations, that Easter is actually the Passover.
Okay. And then if we look Easter, and we talked about this a few weeks ago. Even if you look up the word Easter, it's found in the number 3957. And we have to continue to tell people that this is a English translator. You can look at many other translated Bibles, and some say Passover, some say Pesach. So the fact is that when we go to the Greek dictionary and we look up this Bible verse, we see that Easter here is referring to the Passover or the Passover Festival.
That's all right.
So now, what's wrong with celebrating Easter? I know I may be jumping a little ahead of myself. Some people are going to say, well, what's wrong with us celebrating the resurrection of Christ? And so we want to start going into what's wrong with that and celebrating this Easter festival.
Okay, well, before we go too deep into it, let's start by acknowledging what we were given and its purpose. As we said early on, the Passover was a celebration that commemorates us coming out of the land of Egypt. The communion itself commemorates the death of Mashiach. The problem is now when they bring in Easter, they also bring in something new, because they're saying that Easter, some will tell you that it celebrates his resurrection. And if the Bible didn't give you to celebrate his resurrection, you shouldn't. Then they begin to say, well, it celebrates his death, burial, and his resurrection. But it's by a different name. So even though Easter has been presented as a religious holiday, some of its related customs, such as the Easter egg, are widely linked to pagan traditions. And this is one of the big problems with Easter, because we have so many pagan traditions that's linked to it. The egg, an ancient symbol of new life, has been associated with pagan festivals celebrating spring. From a Christian perspective, and now note they're going to give you a Christian perspective about the egg. Easter eggs are said to represent Jesus' emergence from the tomb and resurrection. Decorating eggs for Easter is a tradition that dates back to at least the 13th century, according to some sources. Now, one explanation for this custom is that eggs were formerly a forbidden food during the Lenten season. So people would paint and decorate them to mark the end of the period of penance and fasting. Okay, then they would eat the Easter eggs as a celebration, and they came to the end of that particular penance and fasting.
Okay. So we see some pagan customs here related to the Easter celebration. What else is there wrong with celebrating Easter?
And like we said, there are a number of customs that's associated with it, and just the Easter egg is just one. The point is, the Bible makes no mention of a long-eared, short-tailed creature who delivers decorated eggs to well-behaved children on Easter Sunday. Nevertheless, the Easter bunny has become a prominent symbol of Christianity's most important holiday. Now, this has been attached to the Easter celebration. And many people will tell you, well, I celebrate Easter, but I don't celebrate the bunny, or I don't have the Easter egg. But you're still dealing with pagan customs, because you're changing, number one, what El gave us. He gave us the Passover and communion, and now you are inputting Easter. And based on its origin, the word that it came from pagans. Now, the exact origin of this mythical mammal are unclear, but rabbits, known to be prolific procreators, are an ancient symbol of fertility and new life. And this is one of the things they like to lean on, because they say it represents life, and so therefore it represents Christ. Now, according to some sources, the Easter Bunny first arrived in America in the 1700s with German immigrants. And those of you that know anything about the Germans, the Teutonic tribes, you know that they were pagan tribes.
Yeah.
Who settled in Pennsylvania and transported their tradition of egg laying hare called Osteros, or Osterter Haas. Now, their children made nests in which their creature could lay its colored eggs. Now, of course, a rabbit doesn't lay colored eggs, but the idea is that they color them, and then they put all these little fairy tales out. Eventually, the custom spread across the U.S., and the fabled rabbit's Easter morning deliveries expanded to include chocolate and other types of candy and gifts, while decorated baskets replaced the nests. So these are just a bunch of pagan traditions that came with the package of Easter.
Right. And Elder, along with this, I want to kind of get, before we move on, because I know we don't have many slides to go over, but when you look at a lot of things, and this is one of the things that we were talking about, a lot of events occurred in the Bible in relationship to Easter. When Christ came through on the donkey, they waved the palm branches. And so people will take an event in the Bible the same way they did with Christmas, where he was born and they gave him gifts. Well, they do the same thing with Palm Sunday, something that comes before Easter Sunday. Well, it is an event in the Bible. People did wave branches, palm branches, and yelled out to the Messiah who's on. But that doesn't constitute us having a feast day or honoring that particular day. I read somewhere, what is this, Lent? It's 40-day Lent. And I didn't do too much studying or reading of it, but they said, well, he was tempted for 40 days. And so that's why we refrain. So there are a lot of events that people will point to. But I want to address, before we move on, the problem with taking these events. People can show you the events in the Bible. What is wrong with people having a day honoring those events?
Well, I'll just be frank with you. I don't like to sugarcoat it. It's just a lie. And we, as people of El, we say that we're not liars, but yet we're supporting something that we know to be a lie. The Bible tells us the name of the festivals that were started by El, and Easter was not among them. Moreover, the Bible tells us, when you look at the Lamb, the Bible clearly associates Christ with the Lamb. Matter of fact, the New Testament says, behold the Lamb of El, which taketh away the sins of the world. Never, not one time did he say, behold the rabbit, okay, no. Or behold the squirrel. No. I know I'm getting a little bit ridiculous and out of place here, but the point is we add things to the Bible, and yet we expect to get the blessings and the promises that the Bible promises, but we're not doing what the Bible said. So it's an error, and it just boils down to being just downright lie.
Okay. And God has a problem with that, with these events being in the Bible, and for you to take those events and just try to honor those things and not even honor what He's given you. He wants
and
you
you're
to
applying it to something that it didn't apply to in the beginning.
Right. He wants you to honor Him with what He gave. You can't say, I don't know, just take an event. And that's how you create religious doctrine. And this is what they've done. I don't care. You're going to go carry a cross, I don't know, 12 miles, and you're going to require a congregation to do a pilgrimage, doing that once a year. The event happened in the Bible, but God is not going to honor that. And He reframes you. I mean, He talks about in the Bible about adding to His word. So, if He didn't say it's a celebration, then we shouldn't do it as a celebration.
I mean, what does Christ have to do with a rabbit? And since when did rabbits lay eggs?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just so many things that's just wrong and just out of place. And yet we teach this to our children, and they come up and they teach it to their children, and we continue these lives, but yet we don't want to be called on it. I'm going to call you on it.
Okay.
It's pagan customs.
Good information. If Easter, and this is going to get good, the next few slides we have, if Easter is truly a holy day, why does it the very principles that it contradicts the Bible? And we want to talk about how long Christ, and I'll go ahead and just read this, Elder, and then we'll talk about the Bible verses here we're going to put up in just a second. By way of prophecy, the Bible precisely determined that the Son of Man, which is Christ, would remain in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. Yet Christian doctrine, Catholicism, declared that He was in the grave from Good Friday until Easter Sunday. The failure to recognize the precise period of interment has caused many to misinterpret the Bible, for it is literally impossible to count 3 days and 3 nights from Friday morning until Sunday morning. So this is what we want to talk about here, Elder. And we have a couple of different Bible verses I'm going to read, and then you can go ahead and comment. It says, "For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." And that's found in Matthew, the 12th chapter, verse 40. And then we have John, the 2nd chapter, verse 19. It says, Yahshua, which is Jesus, answered and said unto them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." So
all right,
they're off, Elder, in this 3 days and 3 nights, counting from Good Friday to Easter Sunday. And that's a huge problem.
Well, they're definitely off. And we could just sit here and count it now, because, and one thing we want to make clear to you later on is going to be very important, is that sometimes when you read the Bible, it's referring to biblical time, the way they calculated time in biblical times. But sometimes, because they were under the captivity of the Roman government, they were using Gentile time or Gregorian time. What do I mean by that? They would count a day as the morning and then the evening. That is, if you're counting by the Gregorian calendar, according to this country, the morning is the beginning of a day, and the night is the end of the day. But in biblical times, it was not so. A day began with the eve. Remember, they kept the Sabbath from eve to eve. So here's the point. If he was in the grave 3 days and 3 nights, and you starting on Good Friday, and of course they're talking about. Go ahead.
Let's go to the next one, so then you can continue on, because here we can show it.
Oh, okay, that sounds good.
Let me read this again, and you can go ahead with your thought. "For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." Go.
Now, that set the precedent that he was in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights. Now, but when we look at what religion says, this is what they say. He was in the grave from Good Friday until Easter Sunday. And when they say Good Friday, they're talking about starting Friday morning. Now, if you start Friday morning, you have one morning. And you go to Friday night, now you have one morning and one night. Here comes Saturday morning. Now you have two mornings. Saturday night, you have 2 mornings and 2 nights. Well, what comes next? Sunday morning. Now, based on that calculation, if he rose on Sunday morning, then you have a problem because now you only have 2.5 days. The Bible says he'd be there 3 days and 3 nights.
Right.
So, first of all, we see that there's a problem with their calculating. And it's really sad when you can't count to 3.
Right.
You know, we got 3 mornings all right, but we don't have 3 nights.
Right,
and that's
exactly.
the problem.
Exactly.
Now, so what does that mean? They got him in the grave at the wrong time. And when we read the Bible, and we'll be showing you after this slide later on, that he went in the grave at a different time. He didn't go in the grave on Friday morning. And we can show you that. But the truth is this. Let's take a look at what would actually happen. If he went in on a Thursday night, now we're talking about biblical time because the eve comes first and then the morning. If he went into the heart of the earth on Thursday night, that's one night. And then Friday morning, that's one morning. So you have 1 day. Then the next day, Friday night, that makes 2 nights. And then Saturday morning, that gives you 2 mornings. So now you have 2 full days. Finally comes Saturday night, which makes 3 nights. And then early Sunday morning would make 3 mornings. So now, only with that count can you come up with 3 days and 3 nights. But more than just telling you that, we have to be able to prove it to you.
Right.
And that's what we intend to do.
Great. So as we look here, and we're going to talk about this again, we have this chart here over to the right again. Now, it's important to understand, Elder, that the Bible never said that he was in the grave 3 full days and 3 full nights, or approximately 72 hours. Here's what we know, and let's just go one by one with this here, Elder. We know that Christ gave up the ghost and was put in the grave on the preparation day, and this is where people get off, Elder. That is the day before the Sabbath, okay? And we can find that in Mark, the 16th chapter, verse 39 and verse 42. So if we know that the Sabbath begins at the going down of the sun Friday, then the preparation day is the day before the Sabbath. So that is at the going down of the sun on Thursday. The Bible is clear that he was put in the grave on the preparation day. So that gives us our day 1, Elder, Thursday night to Friday morning. And that's 1 day and 1 night.
That's all right.
Now, the second day, the Sabbath day, we know he didn't rise on the Sabbath. The Sabbath day is from the going down of the sun Friday to sundown Saturday. So now, here we go again. Friday night to Saturday morning, it makes this 2 nights and 2 days. The Bible never said that he rose on the Sabbath day. Okay?
Never.
Never. Finally,
Now,
it said,
as a matter of fact, and I'm sorry for cutting you off, he rested according to the Sabbath commandment. We're commanded to rest, and that's exactly what he did. So he remained in the grave on the Sabbath.
Excellent. On the 3rd day, he is risen. So Saturday is the 3rd night, and he rose in the morning, according to Matthew 28, 1 through 6. This is the 3rd day. So this means, Elder, now that he was in the grave. I mean, he was for 3 days and 3 nights. And this fulfills Matthew 12:40, which says, "For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." And this proves that. And, you know, I think people get off, Elder, thinking that this was 3 full days and 3 full, or a full 72-hour period.
Well, that's one of the reasons why they go off, and that is a big one. Because, I mean, we can take it another example and understand that. If I said that we're going to be at church today. I didn't say I was going to be there the full day, did I? As long as I go to church on that day, I've been there that day. Now, so if we got 3 days and 3 nights, certainly some of the days and some of the nights will be complete. But I can get up on any time during that 3rd day as long as I have a day and a night. So the Bible never said it, and you shouldn't add to the Bible and say 3 whole days or 3 full days or even 3 complete days. It didn't say that. It said that he'd be in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights. So once I've accomplished that, I can get up at any time on that day and still have fulfilled that prophecy. And so people add to the Bible when they do that. They also add when they don't count 3 days and 3 nights. They count 2 nights and 3 days, or 3 days and 2 nights, and they get it all twisted. What I would suggest is that when we read the Bible, we don't leave out any of the Gospels. Read all of them. They give you a chronological listing of what happened on those days, and it tells you on many different occasions that when the eve was come, so it lets you know when the evening came, and then it said in the morning, and it lets you know when the morning came. If you read it and you follow it, you can understand how he was in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights, and he rose the 3rd day. Now, I can't rise the 3rd day if I'm going to be there the whole day the 3rd day. I must be there and rise on the 3rd day. That's another one of the stipulations in the Bible, and we have to be careful to read the whole Bible, eat the whole roll, so that we won't make a mistake in interpretation.
All right. And this slide here and the one here that we had before it, this one here, is something that if you can concentrate and focus and study these 2 slides, you're going to kind of mess people up, and they might say a few nasty words to you because they cannot prove 3 days and 3 nights. But you
not can. From Good Friday to Sunday morning.
No, they can't do it. So you'll be able to do it. So good information. Elder, when was Christ placed in the heart of the earth, and when was he raised from it as well?
And that's the key question people should be asking. It said he would be in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights. So you have to first pinpoint when was he put in the heart of the earth. Now, a careful review of the Bible reveals exactly when Christ was laid in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. Christ kept the Passover on the 14th at eve, according to the commandments. We know that. And on the morning, that's the morning of the 14th, he was taken before Pilate in Judgment Hall. We can read that in Matthew, we can read it in Mark, and we can read it in Luke. And when we do that, we'll get an understanding of what happened during the morning and the evening of the 14th. Now, but the point is, we continue to go on. And when we do that, we'll find out what happened on the 15th later. So it says in John 17:33, then Pilate entered into Judgment Hall again, and called Yahshua, which is Jesus, and said unto him, art thou the King of the Jews? So there was a lot that was taking place. After this Passover night, he spent a day going from Pilate to Caiaphas to various places to be judged. And in John 18:28 it says, then led they Yahshua from Caiaphas unto the hall of judgment. So he went to Caiaphas first, then he went to the hall of judgment. And it was early. So that lets you know it was morning. And they themselves went not into the judgment hall, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. I want to point out something that's very essential here, and we will be able to deal with this in our later studies. They didn't want to be defiled because they wanted to keep the Passover. Isn't that weird? Mashiach had already kept the Passover. So the Jews at this time were keeping the Passover at a different time than Mashiach and his disciples. And that's key. You need to understand that because today, even till this day, they keep the Passover at a different time. And that's because of their counting of the new moon.
That's great. And, you know, you know, people get so messed up over this, and I don't want to even go and start talking about that. But if we know that it's a commandment to keep the Passover on the 14th day, and we know that Christ kept it on the 14th day, and we read in Luke the 22nd chapter, says, then came the day of unleavened bread when the Passover must be killed. And he had his disciples to prepare the Passover that they may eat. And so we see after this, Elder, that all these Jews were keeping it a different day, because now they're going to eat the Passover on a totally different day than him and his disciples. So everybody was off. But again, I think that's important, because people start getting caught up in that when they say, well, how come this group over here is keeping the Passover on Sunday? We're going to keep it on Saturday. And you're going to find out that there are even people who keep the Passover this year will be keeping it on Monday. And I think I've seen one group keep it on Tuesday. So from all the way back in biblical times, they've been keeping Passover differently than what the true church kept it. And I think that's important.
That's all right.
So we're talking about Christ placed in the heart of the earth and when he was raised. As you just said, Elder, on the evening of the 15th, Joseph of Arimathea begged for the body of Yahshua and laid it in his own tomb. The Bible identified that day as the preparation day. That is the day before the Sabbath. Because the Sabbath is celebrated from even to even, which is from Friday evening until Saturday evening, the preparation day, the day before the Sabbath, is from Thursday evening until Friday evening. And I think we established that point pretty good, Elder. But we have a lot of information here in these two Bible verses. Do you want to sum these up, or you want to go ahead and read through?
Well, I think these are important for us to read, because this is the only way that you can establish when he was put in the heart of the earth. Let's take a look at John 19:29 through 31. It says, when the eve was come. Now, this is not the same eve that they kept the Passover. This is the eve of the 15th. There came a rich man of Arimathea named Joseph, who also himself was Yahshua's disciple. He went to Pilate and begged the body of Yahshua. Then Pilate commanded the body to be delivered. And when Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn out of a rock. Now, this eve, the eve of the 15th, is when he went into the heart of the earth. So he didn't go there on the first day of the Passover. This was the second day of the Passover that he went in. But guess what? If we're talking about the preparation day, and this was the preparation day, we can clearly identify it as Thursday Eve, okay? Simply because the Sabbath is observed from eve to eve, that is from Friday evening to Saturday evening, and therefore a day before that, the preparation day, is from Thursday evening until Friday evening. So we can establish when he was put in the tomb. What really we need to do now is be able to tell when he got up. So if he went in there Thursday to count, Thursday evening, the count that we gave you would have to be valid, because it gives you three days, not 3 whole days, but 3 days and 3 nights, unlike the other people's count that gives you 2.5 days. And I'm excited about this, and you should be too.
Oh, I'm excited.
Let me just read the last verse. And there was Mary Magdalene and the other Mary sitting over against the sepulchre. So he was definitely in the grave, okay, that Thursday Eve. And the last verse, Mark 15:42 through 47. And now when the even was come, know how both writers are telling you, letting you know when the eve came is when he did it. Because it was the preparation. That is the day before the Sabbath. So it's clearly identifying what day this was that he was put in the tomb. And Joseph of Arimathea, an honorable counselor, which also waited for the kingdom of El, came and went in boldly unto Pilate, and craved the body of Yahshua. And Pilate marveled if he were already dead. And calling unto him the centurion, he asked him whether he had been any while dead. And when he knew of it, or knew it of the centurion, he gave the body to Joseph. And he brought the fine linen and took took him down and wrapped him in the linen and laid him in a sepulchre. When did he do this? On the eve of the 15th. That's on a Thursday eve. It is clear from the Bible when he was put in the grave. And the Bible clearly tells us when he rose up. Because if you can count 3 days and 3 nights, there's no mistaking that he rose early Sunday morning. But people get problems, they get messed up because they have him in the grave at the wrong time, or they're counting the wrong event. You won't add the time he was on the cross. The Bible said in the heart of the earth, and on the cross is not in the earth. So when we get these points straight, we can know what the Bible is saying.
And can you just imagine, Elder, just to learn this point alone, to learn when he was put in the grave, to learn when he rose, will just blow this whole Easter, Good Friday, all the little religious festivals out the water.
Way out of the water. That's why Easter is wrong, because the count is messed up. It's pagan. It has all these problems with it, but yet, you know what? We want to continue to observe it. Why? Because the majority is doing it. And guess what? The majority is on the downward road, and it surely is crowded.
All right. So we want to show a graphic depiction of the events, Elder, so it'll give people a clearer understanding of what happened on the 14th, the 15th, the 16th, and so forth. So since Jonas was in the whale's belly for 3 days and 3 nights, and Yahshua was likewise in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights, a graphic depiction of his interment until his resurrection would be depicted as follows. Elder, let's look at this so we can show the 14th through the 17th and what was going on those days.
Okay, and because we're using biblical Hebrew time, the eve comes first. So the eve of the 14th, he sat down with his disciples and he had the Passover. He later had communion. Okay, they included on that night feet washing. He went out to pray in the Garden of Gethsemane, and those verses that you see there will verify that. Then comes the morning. The morning of what? The 14th. The eve and the morning was the first day, okay? Yahshua is taken what? Before Caiaphas and Pilate, and he's stripped of his garments, he's ridiculed, and he's crucified. And eventually, he gives up the ghost. And that's what happened on the morning of the 14th. Next day, the 15th, this is the second day of the Passover celebration. In the eve, the body of Yahshua is taken from the cross and placed in Joseph's tomb. That day was the preparation day, and that's the only way we can identify what day that was. So now, that eve represented that first night that he was in the tomb. So comes the morning. And this represents the first morning that he was in the tomb. Then we go to the 16th. Now we have him in the grave a second night. And then the morning comes. And you can read this stuff in the Bible. Guess what? This whole day, this evening and morning, this is the Sabbath. And so he's there on the 16th. That's the third day of the Passover. That fourth day of the Passover, we have that what? That Saturday evening. Okay? And then we have Saturday morning when the Bible tells us that after the Sabbath was passed, very early in the morning, And it clearly tells you the first day of the week. Read enough of the verses and you'll see it.
Sunday, right.
And he rose. So there's no other way to write this out and depict it with 3 days and 3 nights unless you follow that pattern. You do anything else and you're going to get it wrong. And you can't count 3 days and 3 nights. It's impossible.
This is another good chart to have to continue to go over. So you can look at the order of events, and, you know, it's no mistaking, it's no denying when he went into the grave and when he rose.
That's all right.
So we have to talk about a day. And the question we have is, how can you be certain that Matthew 12:40 and John, the 2nd chapter, verse 19, refer to the same period of time? And so, we have to understand the day, and that the word day is used in several different ways throughout the Bible. However, the fact remains that both verses refer to the same period of time that the body of Christ would remain in the earth. The Bible identifies a day as a 12-hour period, and we can find that in John, the 11th chapter, verse 9. We're going to read that in a second. And as a 24-hour period. And we have the book of Genesis. We're going to just go ahead and read chapter 1, verse 13. Matthew clearly expresses periods of day and night, while John, the 2nd chapter, verse 19, refer to the same period of a time as a day. So let's look at this chart, Elder, and talk about some of these Bible verses that we have here. If we look at Genesis, the 1st chapter, verse 13, it says, "In the evening and the morning were the 3rd day." Okay, so we see that the evening consists of approximately 12 hours, and the morning consists of approximately 12 hours. So we see in Genesis that it's talking about both the evening and the morning, which is about 24 hours. If we look in the New Testament, in the book of John, the 11th chapter, verse 9, it says, and we read this before, we had this in another Bible study. It says, "Yahshua answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walk in the day, he stumbleth not." And the next line is important to understand what Yahshua was talking about. "Because he seeth the light of this world." So you see the light of this world in the morning time when the sunlight is out. So this is what John was speaking of here. He was talking about the morning period, but he still referred to it, Elder, as a day.
Right.
And you know, we have some people. There are some people out there that keep a 12-day Sabbath because of this Bible verse. But it's important that we understand how the word day is being used.
Now, one other thing we have to be, the Bible only uses the word day in these 2 ways. Now, some people want to argue and tell you, well, the Bible uses a 3rd use of the word day, and I would just simply show them where they're messing up at. That's the verse where it says that a day is unto Mashika as 1,000 years. Mm-hmm. Note the word as. It didn't say it is. It said it's as. So it's like. So that is not a definition of the word day that we can use and apply. Okay? It's as 1,000 years. So, but we're talking about the use of the word day in relationship to the festivals that they kept and so forth. So a day can refer only to the morning part, which is approximately 12 hours. Or a day can refer to the morning and the evening, which is approximately 24 hours. And that's the only 2 uses of the word day that gives you a clear-cut example of what a day is. People mix it up because when they read the Bible and it says that Christ is going to be in the heart of the earth 3 days, they get confused because they don't know what it means. Does it mean 12 hours, 3 12-hour days, or does it mean 3 24-hour days, or does it mean what? Just 3 days. People get confused because they don't know what the word day means and how it's used in the Bible. But there's no need to get confused, okay? Because one writer made it clear by saying 3 days and 3 nights. So you have evening and morning. And that's why there's no reason to be confused. But the writers, when they're talking about the same topic, they used the same definition of the word day.
Right. And I had someone, say, yeah, well, a day is 1,000 years. Well, it's about 3,000 years. Somebody better go get Christ out the cave. If it's that long, because it don't even make sense. 3,000.
Well, but that's another thing. That's another thing that you just brought to my mind. If it's as 1,000 years unto Christ, you want to keep a 1,000-year Sabbath? You can't do it. It's impossible. So there are things that relate to Christ that don't relate to us, but the key word is as. It didn't say it is 1,000 years, and that's what we have to actually understand. People miss those simple 2-letter words, and that's why they misinterpret the Bible.
Okay. Last slide. Get your questions ready. Elder, I'll let you go ahead and get this last one. Is there any other way to show that Matthew 12:40 and John 2:19 refer to the same period of time?
And there certainly is. And the verse that we want to use, just to sum it up, is Isaiah, the 28th chapter, verses 10 and 13. It says, for precept must be upon precept. Now, if you don't know what a precept is, you're lost. You don't understand this verse. Precept upon precept. Line upon line, line upon line. If you don't know what a line is, you're still lost. Here a little and there a little. In other words, if you want to understand the Bible, a precept is a rule. It's a general rule. So you must read the Bible precept upon precept. In other words, you take the rules and you use them to interpret it, line upon line, because the Bible is written in lines. It has words that form lines, and you must use the rule to interpret the lines. For example, there are a lot of verses that seem like they contradict one another. This writer is telling you, if you want to understand the Bible, use the precepts. Those verses in the Bible that are very clear and to the point, to interpret those lines which are somewhat ambiguous.
Ambiguous, right.
Are you hearing me? You will make very few mistakes if you learn this golden rule. For example, when you see the Bible say something about any topic, and it seems like it's contradicting another verse, use a verse that's clear and to the point that gives you the general rule to interpret those verses that seem to have more than one interpretation. And that's what this writer is saying. And how do we know that? At the end of it says that they might go and fall backwards. The word was unto them precept upon precept and line upon line, and it was that way so that they would go backwards and fall backwards and be broken. So if you don't know precept and line and understand how to use it, the same thing's going to happen to you. Okay, you're going to fall backwards, be broken, and never understand the Bible. You must understand this principle if you're going to understand the Bible. And that's just one of the many principles in the Bible that teaches you how to interpret the Bible.
That's excellent. And what Elder is saying, there are concrete Bible verses. There are Bible verses that are just strong by themselves. And probably for every one concrete verse, you may have 10 ambiguous verses on the same subject. And what religion does is they use these ambiguous Bible verses to shape and form their doctrine. That's why people misinterpret or they interpret Bible scriptures the wrong way, because they left out the concrete Bible verses. And so when you include the concrete, these ambiguous can't stand by themselves. And I can make the Bible say whatever I want it to say by using ambiguous Bible verses.
Well, I mean, one clear example, we read the Bible, and there's no way you can get around it. The Bible will tell you that there are 3 that bear record in heaven, and that is very much ambiguous, because guess what? It allowed the Catholicism to come up with the concept of the Trinity. But there are no 3 persons up in heaven. Are you hearing me? You must find a verse that's so clear and precise that shows you that there's no 3 persons, but there are 3 forms of the same person, and then you can understand that. And one verse in the New Testament tells you about Messiah and said that he came and appeared to them in another form. So El takes many forms. And when you understand this rule that we just gave you, there's a lot of mistakes you won't be making.
Excellent. All right, we got it out the way. We got it done in an hour for our question and answer. I hope everybody was able to hear me okay. If I listen back to this recording and I'm yelling through the whole Bible study, somebody's in trouble. But we're going to go ahead and open it up for our questions and answers. If you have any questions, go ahead and hit *6 on your phone, *6 on your keypad, and we'll answer any of your questions. I think it's important that you understand one of the things that we talked about that I think was very critical to people's understanding, something that they really should get, elders, that 3 days, and understanding that chart, how he was in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. And as we wait, I also think that it's important to be able to defend the fact, as we talked about earlier, Elder, the Palm Sunday, the Easter, by them saying that he rose and we're just celebrating his death and resurrection. It's important for us to understand what the Bible told us to celebrate.
That's all right.
And not to find an event in the Bible and take it upon ourselves to create a day and offer it up to him. We said the heck of what he said to celebrate, but we're going to create something that is not in the Bible and give it to him and say, well, you know, I'm doing it for him, so you worship God the way you worship God, and I worship God the way I worship God. That's not how it works. So it's important that we be able to clearly understand what Passover commemorates and what communion commemorates.
And please, saints, stop saying what El understands. He understands. He knows. You know what? If you don't know how to interpret the Bible, how do you know what he knows? Do it like he said, and then you'll save yourself a big problem.
Okay. So if you have any questions, *6. I'm going to keep moving on. Go ahead and hit *6 on your keypad, *6 on your phone if you have any questions. We want to go ahead and we're going to have this uploaded here on our page, on our Facebook page, on our YouTube channel, as well as tvbeyth-el.net here shortly. So if you want to go back and look over this Bible study, I think it's worth doing it a couple of more times. I have everyone's name who I'm going to print this out for and give it to you this week. If you have any questions, send the questions to BibleStudy@Beyth-el.net. Myself and Elder Avery, we'll make sure that we get back to you as soon as possible. Minister Nate helping us out here and answering these questions, and we'll respond back to your questions. Definitely want you to become a member of us. Find more about us, go to www.tvbeyth-el.net. We're definitely looking forward to you. We have churches growing in other states here in the United States as well as West Africa, out in London, and so we definitely want you to become a member of us. Make sure you go and visit us at www.tvbeyth-el.net. Last but not least, we definitely will want you to join us for our Passover celebration, which is coming up here in about 3 weeks, beginning April 12th at the going down of the sun. This is our Holy Convocation Passover celebration here in Chicago, Illinois. For more information, I ask that you contact myself, Minister Al, at 312-273-4068, or send an email to me at Passover2014@Beyth-el.net. So if you don't have any questions, comments, concerns, we're going to go ahead and close out tonight. Elder, anything else before we get out of here?
No, I'm just happy about this lesson, and it really excites me to talk about it.
Okay. We're going to be back. I guess we probably have about 2 more weeks of some Passover stuff that we want to go over. I think next week we possibly will go over some of the ordinances that you should get prepared in your house, what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be eating, and you know, so we got a lot to talk about. We want to make sure that for those that are keeping the Passover for the first time, that they're keeping the Passover correctly and they know how to get their house in order. So we'll be back here next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Central Time. Until then, we'll see you this Shabbat. All right. Thank you all for joining.
Shalom.